we are fortunate enough to be joined by Jennifer Drowder, who is the head of Government Regions Business Development for Technology Partners at Amazon Web Services, otherwise known as AWS. In her role, Jennifer drives strategic growth and collaboration between AWS and its technology partners, focusing on enabling government agencies to harness the power of cloud computing through SaaS solutions, navigating the complexities of FedRAMP authorizations, and facilitating seamless cloud integration. So to say we have an expert on our hands is an understatement. So we're really grateful to have you here, Jennifer. And she is joined by one of Bonterra's own, Melissa Arcand, who is our VP of SaaS operations here, where Melissa oversees a team of engineers responsible for managing the global infrastructure and SaaS applications, including GovCloud and FedRAMP products. Her leadership is really instrumental in ensuring secure and compliant solutions tailored for global social good organizations. So we're super lucky to have our internal expert with us as well. Really appreciate you both for being here. I will take my background and backseat and let you take it away. Thank you both, and super excited for the session.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here today. Again, Jennifer Droder with AWS. And what I thought I would do is take a few minutes to talk about AWS government regions and GovCloud specifically, which is the infrastructure on which Bonterra's platform is built. And it is really a testament to the forward thinking of Bonterra to use these purpose built regions in order to create solutions, SaaS offering solutions that meet the high bar for compliance and sensitive data requirements. So, if you're not familiar with AWS and the way that we operate, um, AWS has a concept of regions, which are really physical locations where a cluster of data centers exist. Those data centers are organized into availability zones, which are organized into regions. And so, think about this as an organization of cloud computing in a specific geographic location. And in the United States, we have 6 regions. Two of these regions, public regions, are our AWS GovCloud regions. And so these were built, purpose built, to meet the complex compliance and sensitive data requirements of the US federal government. So we've sort of baseline on US federal requirements. And such as FedRAMP and DoD CCSRG. But really, the takeaway here is because of the compliance posture of these regions built to meet federal requirements, if you are a state and local government customer, if you are a, um, a private entity that operates federal adjacent, like interconnecting with HHS or VA, or if you're working in the defense industrial base or regulated industry, GovCloud may be the right and the appropriate region to deploy in. So again, from a region perspective, you would inherit the ATO and the compliance of the services from AWS for the things that you consume from us, and this would enable you to speed to ATO for anything that is built on top of us. And again, these regions support a multitude of programs, SaaS offerings, and they're really purpose built to meet the federal government requirements. So sort of level set again, we have 2 GovCloud regions in the United States, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, very aptly named GovCloud US East and GovCloud US West. They operate a little bit differently from standard AWS regions. They look and feel like AWS regions in terms of any AWS regions in terms of the services that are deployed there, the console, if you're used to looking at that. But really, the differentiator is meeting the federal compliance requirements. The networks are data, or the regions are data network and machine isolated from other regions. They are only in the United States, and they are operated by US citizens. And that is really a reaction to government requirements we get, which is something along the lines of I need you to be FedRAMP moderate, but I also need you to have a US citizen only support model. In terms of connectivity options, these regions are internet facing. You can also direct connect to them. If you're serving in the DoD adjacent space, we can offer CAP connections, trusted internet TIC connections for the federal government, the civilian federal government, and the services have FIPS 140-2 endpoints, which is a requirement of FedRAMP. So I'll build this out real quick. So as I mentioned, these regions are built to meet the high compliance bar. So if you are looking for FedRAMP, the region is authorized up to FedRAMP High. We also authorize the services up to FedRAMP High, DoD SRG up to Impact Level 5. If you are operating from a state perspective, GovCloud is where we say if you need to be state ramped, you need to deploy in GovCloud because the FedRAMP requirements will meet the state ramp requirements. ITAR, if you're holding ITAR data, DFARS, CGIS for our state and local law enforcement customers. The FBI CGIS database, for example, is hosted on GovCloud. HIPAA, CMMC are all compliance regimes that GovCloud can support. We have over 12 years of experience in this space with these regions. These regions offer redundant power, cooling, transit. They are really purpose built to meet the government requirement, to meet resiliency requirements, and overall bring that view of AWS regions that is purpose built for government customers. I touched on this, but here again, just sort of an eye chart of the compliance regimes that are supported within GovCloud. NIST 800-53 Rev 4, soon to be Rev 5. We will be ready for that. We are working very diligently to get there. FedRAMP High, you don't have to operate at FedRAMP High, but we do. DoD, SRG, CGIS, ITAR, CMMC, all of these are word salad that you or letter salad that you will have probably heard or will hear as you work more and more in the government space. And there's just a smattering of the government customers that we support, just a very high level. So you'll notice federal government customers. We support state and local government customers on these regions. We are supporting industries that are adjacent to the federal government that have that are subject to the compliance requirements that federal governments are required to support. Fun fact, if you completed your 2020 US Census online, you did that in GovCloud. So that just kind of give you a feel for the kinds of things that we're doing in the region and the kind of customers we support in the region. So I wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about security fundamentals and design fundamentals from an AWS perspective, really sort of the grounding on which Bonterra and you will kind of all build on top of. Um, we offer over 50 global compliance regimes. So we support all the compliance regimes I talked about in the United States. If you were looking for a deployment overseas, there are UK, Australia, Japanese, there's all sorts of government requirements around the world. We take those very seriously and we build infrastructure that is supportive of those as well. We build infrastructure for the most security sensitive organizations, right? For AWS, security is our first job. It is the underpinning of everything we do. And we don't build something if we cannot ensure that it is built to our security standard. We have a robust identity and access management program. And so we really talk a lot about in our security best practices around least privilege, zero trust, ensuring that you are only giving the access that you need for a person in the environment, and we enable that fine granularity via our IAM. And then we have a plethora of security services that you can use to augment what you're doing to match your compliance requirements, to match your internal security requirements. So just kind of a quick view sort of how traditional on-prem security model versus the cloud model. It's a little compare and contrast. And so at the most basic level, if you are not operating in the cloud, you are responsible for everything. You're responsible for the data center, the power, the cooling, the disaster recovery, the equipment, the source code, the software, the databases. You're responsible for all of the things. And what cloud really does, and the power of cloud, is enabling you to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting. And this is what we're doing for Bonterra, is we're removing the security, the requirements of the security of the cloud. So we are providing the physical infrastructure, we are doing all of the physical components, we're providing the base services, the infrastructure, and the software, in the security of the cloud. And what that allows Bonterra to do is to provide the security in the cloud, to deploy their architecture, their SaaS on top of us, take advantage of the services that we offer in the region, the compliance that those services hold, and allow their services to inherit, or their product to inherit, our security controls for the things that they consume from us. Take advantage of our third-party independent audit, and our audit program in generally. So really, cloud enables Bonterra and other SaaS providers to really focus on the things that they do well in terms of building solutions, building offerings, and secure those. And so we are really excited that we are able to partner and provide what we think is our world-class infrastructure to support what we think is their world-class product. And again, just some high-level security design principles that sort of underpin everything that we do, and you will see mirrored in the conversation that Melissa has. Implements a strong security foundation, enable traceability, apply security at all levels, automate security best practices, make sure you're providing sort of least privilege access to data, and also, have a really solid resiliency plan. So with that, that's the end of my comments. And so, Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
A wonderful segue into the talking points that we have from the Bonterra side. In our experience, and just kind of giving some foundation, we chose AWS as our partner because of the foundation and the security background that they have, and our ability to trust them as a industry leader and world like recognized around the world in terms of their security and best practices. And as Jennifer highlighted, we don't have to worry about the physical hardware and the security around that. We know that every single person who's entering that facility is tracked, they're US citizens, et cetera. And so we're able to provide those same assurances to you from both the physical hardware facilities and then all the way through to the way that we implement things as well. So really, kind of from the secure cloud design perspective, we've got three main questions that I'd encourage you to ask yourself. Who do you trust with access to your data? Who can you turn to for support with security and issues when they arise? And are you prepared for the what if happens? We just had a massive hurricane that blew through and is still kind of rippling up into North America. What happens if your power goes out? What happens if your internet goes out? Are you prepared for that? And is your data and the solutions that you use to access and store that, interact with that, secured for those what if situations as well? So we're going to go into and talk through a little bit of these as it relates to Bonterra and as it relates to things that you're going to want to consider when you're choosing a solution for tracking and managing your data and your customers and even your customers' information. So you want to click to the next slide? We'll move into, let's talk a little bit about access. So that question is, who do you trust with access to your data? I've been working in the social good industry for well over a decade now. And I actually came from and worked with some of our social good organizations, and it was pen and paper. I remember the days I was taking case notes and recording people's phone numbers and names and addresses and dates of birth and a whole slew of information about them on pen and paper. The organization I was with transitioned to a server that was located in the office closet because we didn't have a server room. And further, then we transitioned into using a secure, robust solution, such as Bonterra, where it's actually hosted with a world-recognized hosting provider. So that kind of leads into this consideration. There's risks and benefits to each of them. Pen and paper, it's right there. You can write it down. You don't need internet for pen and paper. However, the ease of writing that information down also enables or has risk around the ease of losing that information, having it stolen. One of the biggest fears I used to have when I was working with that organization, and actually occurred for a staff member that I know, not Bonterra, to be clear, they actually had their car stolen. And in that car was a briefcase full of client notes. So not only was that PHI and that PII information leaked and lost, it also had the situation where there is no backup. So they now had years of notes on some of the clients they were working with lost. So they had no way of getting that data back. So while it was easy to write it in pen and paper, the risk of something as simple as a car theft, which we know happens all the time in the States, puts that risk of that data leak and that data, and even just your ability to continue providing those services to the level you want to those customers at risk. So yes, we love pen and paper. However, we want to make sure that we're really ensuring that we're securing that. The server in the closet, this one's always fun. I know a number of organizations, they'll spin up a server, they'll have their IT will spin one up. It's only as secure as your building. What are your practices? How are you tracking and logging who's accessing your building? As Jennifer stated, these are US citizens that are accessing the GovCloud, and we know that they have tracking. Everything's screened, everything's logged as who's going in and accessing those servers. And at any time, that information can be provided if there were an incident or a concern. That information typically isn't the case for a lot of office buildings. How many key holders do you have? Do you have monitoring around knowing who those key holders are? And do you even have screening when people enter and leave the building? Do you know whether they're entering that server room or not? Those are all things that if you're hosting it yourself or you're using the solution that you need to think about and consider. Leading into the trusted partner, we have a wonderful partnership with AWS. We know at any time, we know who's accessing that server facility, and even all the way up to our software and our staff who are logging in. AWS has really enabled and empowered us to see and be able to track closely who's logging in, who has access. We can restrict and prevent people who shouldn't be in there from accessing it. And with our GovCloud environment, only our US staff are in there. And we can guarantee that it is a US citizen that is working with and interacting with your data at any given time where it's required. So that is a really important thing to consider and think through. It's kind of the foundation of everything else you're going to be looking at and thinking about with your solutions. That leads into the compliance, the lovely acronym jumble that we have with all the compliance. How many of you are experts in that information? Do you know what all those compliance requirements are around data retention, data restriction, data regency, data access? Many of us are not experts in that, and that's why we have experts in AWS and experts at Bonterra whose entire job is to stay up to date on the compliance requirements, ensure that practices are in place, and ensure that auditing, both internal and third-party audits, are occurring to ensure that you're meeting those compliance requirements. Are you doing that as an organization? Do you have those controls? Do you know that your debt records are being stored securely? How long they're being stored for? Are you shredding those pen and paper afterwards? Are you going back and deleting that data off that server? When you need to get new hardware, are you actually properly decommissioning that hardware that had that data on it in the first place? Which leads into the destruction. Are you making sure that that's tracked and done in appropriate timeframes? How many times have leaks happened or issues occurred because someone had a hardware or a phone that they recycled and never cleared off in the first, and they didn't properly delete the data from? Data regency and data access, different geographic regions and different funders and things have different requirements. One of the big things with FedRAMP is ensuring that data stays in region. In other words, if it's data from the US, it has to stay in the US. Similarly, some of our other customers, not on GovCloud, but in other areas, they have requirements. If it's Canadian, it needs to stay in Canadian. If it's the UK, it needs to stay in the UK, Australia, Australia. These are pretty common requirements. And one of the things that AWS really helps empower is they have these regions located around the world, and we're able to deploy our software out securely into multiple regions. So we can be confident that your data as a US organization is remaining in the US at all times. And similarly, the access classifications, PHI is personal health information, PII, personal identifying information. There's requirements around how that data is accessed, how it's logged, how it's stored, what can be shared and not. There's business associate agreements that you may need to have in place. We're able to ensure that we meet those requirements through our standards and through our audits and our compliance programs, both as Bonterra and with AWS in our partnership with them. So who you can turn to for support? There's kind of a few different solutions folks typically use for their software. An internal department, an in-house, you've written something, someone's cousin happens to be really good with software and wrote a custom program for you. they're generally not experts on those compliance. And as things change or that person leaves the organization, that IT person leaves, there's a lot of loss of knowledge and background. And then going forward, maybe it's less secure, maybe you're not able to stay up to date with updates, or it's no longer meeting the compliance requirements that you have. Next one we see a lot is custom software development companies. So we have a software company that will build it custom to your needs. Well, as we often know with custom, you pay for what you get. So you pay them to build it. What happens when that compliance requirement changes? What happens if they go out of business? Are you confident that your data is still secure? Are you confident you're going to get security updates, that you're going to get software updates? As the needs of your organization grows and you might need to track or change the data that you're tracking, are you confident that the application is going to grow with you? If the government suddenly has a new funding requirement, are you confident that you're tracking that data and you have the ability to track it and report on it out? A lot of times with custom software development, they build it for you. If you want those changes, you're going to be paying again. That leads you into trusted industry partners. One of the strengths that Bonterra has and AWS has is we are an industry leader in this area. We are known as experts. We have high credibility. We wouldn't be able to keep our customer database if we didn't keep things up to date, if we weren't staying on top of those growing compliance and funding requirements and continuing to introduce new functionality, new features, be able to really empower you to track and report on your data as those things change. That's part of our standard support. That's part of what we provide as an industry leader. It's part of what you pay for when you use the software. It's also something that we're able to rely on AWS for. So as new security requirements come out, as hardware gets old and needs to be replaced, we don't have to keep paying for that. We don't have to pay again and again with AWS because that's something that we get as partnering with them and using the GovCloud regions. We know that as those security requirements, NIST and FedRAMP come out, they're staying up to date. They're ensuring their services are compliant. And not only that, I can speak first person, like from experience, they proactively reach out to their customers with advanced notifications and provide guidance and support to ensure that even our software can be updated to stay compliant with those new requirements. So it's a really amazing partnership we have with them. And that's because they're an industry leader. They know and they're specialized in this. So then we talk about the what ifs. As much as we never want to have the what if day happens, it happens. As we just saw, a major hurricane came up through. We have a number of people, through Texas and other states that don't have power or don't have internet at the moment. These situations occur. A fire at an office building, a staff member leaves, or worse, even worse, a staff member passes away set abruptly. All that data and that knowledge can be lost. So when you're looking at staff loss, are you prepared for them are you prepared for a staff leaving your organization? They found a job elsewhere. Are you prepared for a staff member passing away and that sudden loss of information? Are you confident that if a staff member leaves, you're still going to be able to access your data? You're going to be able to transition the responsibilities from that previous staff member to the new staff member. And are you going to be able to easily remove access to that staff member? Maybe they're not departing in the best of circumstances. Are you confident that you can ensure that your system and your data is secure and reliable, and they're not going to be able to cause any negative effects as they depart? Are you able to track and audit that? One of the really important things that we have both with AWS and also within our solutions with Bonterra is systems and workflows that allow for transitioning access and transitioning workflows and processes between staff members. And not only doing that, but also having audit trails behind that. So we can see when did we decommission or remove this access? When did we add access? What access did we add? Who did that action? So being able to see and audit that information also allows you to be better prepared in the situation something negative occurs. Maybe you didn't remove the access. Are you able to see and audit what occurred with that access in the interim? Natural disasters, as we just saw, if your power goes out, if your internet goes out, if you have an office fire, are you confident that your data is going to be safe and secured redundantly? If you're pen and paper, you have an office fire, you've lost your data. There's no getting that back. It's burned. It's burned up, it's gone. If you're using a server in your office location, similarly, that hardware is gone. Is that data backed up somewhere? not only backed up, but do you have it spread out geographically? So if there's a natural disaster or an earthquake or a hurricane that wipes out a swath of an infrastructure, knocks out a building, a tornado rolls through, are you confident that you've got enough geographic distance between that data that you can recover that information, that you're not going to be out of business because you don't have that data? One of the, as Jennifer mentioned, they have multiple regions and what we call availability zones. So different hardware that's kind of spaced out. It's in geographic areas. It'll be on different floodplains, different earthquake zones, etc. It's spread out. One of the amazing and awesome things that AWS has really empowered Bonterra is our disaster recovery plan. If we were to have an office fire, we know we can continue staying up and keep running for you. If for some reason something happened in one of the AWS regions and a data center that has, and the information that's there, we have it backed up in different regions and different availability zones. So we can recover that data and not only recover it, but also very rapidly spin the infrastructure up so we can have you back online within hours and minutes, not days or weeks or months that occur if you lose your office building or if there's an earthquake or power outage. So one of the, I guess, perks or one of the really strong benefits and things I want you to consider is how prepared are you for those situations? We never expect it to happen, but when it happens, it's not great. And you want to make sure your staff are safe. You want to figure out how you're going to get a new office, how you're, get phones up and running. You've got so many other things to be concerned about. Knowing that your data and your information is not one of them is very important. We don't want you to have to worry about that while you're dealing with the disaster that's occurring. There's other more important things. And not only that, as an agency and organization that provides social good, your services are going to be even more in demand in those situations. So you want to make sure that you can provide and support your customer base as they're dealing with those natural disasters and not be hindered or impacted by loss of data. And then the thing that's becoming a very big thing, as we're all aware and we hear a lot about, is cyber threats. We hear about hacks, we hear about data breaches. Seems like every day there's something in the news where a new company's had something hacked and they've lost, all the names and email addresses and phone numbers of their customers have gone out. Are you prepared for that? Are you sure that you have monitoring in place, that your data is safe? Do you know if you're running a server or something in your closet or in your office server room, do you have monitoring things in place to know if there's a breach there? If there is a breach, do you know how to respond? Are you going to be able to quickly mitigate and contain that so that it doesn't ripple out and that data doesn't get exposed further? And are you able to see and audit what has been done and what's occurred so you know the full extent? One of the amazing, I keep saying amazing, but one of the things I really appreciate with AWS is they have wonderful auditing and tracking with CloudTrail and other systems in their application that enable us to not just have that auditability of this, but also have software and services that allow us to quickly monitor and contain any issues and allow for remediation if they were to occur. This is in addition to additional things and services and stuff that we have in place and additional software tools that we have within our application and within our server infrastructure that we run on top of AWS that also provide that. We have 24/7 monitoring and response. Do you have that for your office? Do you have that for the solutions that you're using? Are you confident that if something did happen, you would be able to contain it, respond, remediate, and still stay in business? So we'll move on. So that's the spiel I have, and some things for you to consider around secure design of your cloud adoption strategy. Jennifer, what are your thoughts on some of those items? Are things like, I know the areas that AWS has really supported us in being able to provide to our customers, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so really we think about cloud in terms of and building on top of infrastructure in terms of sort of core best practices and core things that should be considered. So, scalability, flexibility, we talked about that. cloud offers and AWS offers access to technology that often is not available uh, economically or broadly to folks who are not deployed in the cloud. Reliability is a big cornerstone of what we talk about and what we think about. Um, whether that is a multi-region deployment, a multi-AZ deployment, how are you thinking about backing up databases and infrastructure? So that is a core tenet to what we do. And we think that really another thing that really is an underpinning of cloud and its importance is what cloud does in terms of innovation, right? And being able to innovate rapidly. We talk a lot about internally about developing and failing fast. Cloud allows for that, right? You talked about you don't have to have a server in a server room. You don't have to have a server in a closet. You can spin up a server. You can test. You can fail. You can spin down and kind of allow for that iteration. And so we think all of those aspects are really key to supporting folks like Bonterra as you continue to innovate, as you continue to build reliable, reliant solutions on behalf of your customers.
Sure. I will say, similar to one of the things AWS has been able to provide to us is that ability to have a playground or an environment to test out and try out new solutions. We take a similar approach with our customers of we have what we call your production, and we have a sandbox or a place where, while we're implementing with you, you can try out new solutions without risking that production or that live environment that you're going to work with. And so we take that similar approach around try, fail fast, and be able to innovate quickly in the sandbox and the production environments that we have and the solutions we can provide to you and provide to our customers as part of their rollout. We want you to succeed. And part of that is learning lessons quickly and being able to adapt and change quickly to those. That's a definitely important one to call out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other aspect as well is, there are lots of conversations around tools like Gen AI in general, and all of these terms that sort of come out and it's sort of how do you how do you take advantage of that, or how do you take advantage of the latest tool? And I think one of the great things about cloud and what you guys are doing is just really the leadership in terms of thinking about these technologies and looking around corners for your customers and what is the next thing, or what is the next feature or functionality that they need. And I think, I like to think that building on AWS has helped you do that and really support our shared customers with really bringing security, reliability, and innovation to the space, that sort of, as they say, skate to where the puck is, or not to where the puck is but where it's going, right? And so I think that's a real key aspect of our relationship.
Definitely. The AI, we're hearing that all over the place. And one of the benefits with the cloud is you're able to think through and try that. And when you're working with a partner who's invested in that, we've had an amazing partnership with AWS in that front. We're able to do some testing and really figure out and project that forward. But not only that, but think about it from a secure way and a way that meets compliance requirements.
Mhm.
Both AWS and within our staff, having that expertise of what those requirements are, we can innovate in a safe, secure way to allow you to innovate and take advantage of these new things that are coming out while still meeting your compliance requirements and being able to provide that evidence to the to FedRAMP and to the government and to your funders that you're able to kind of really innovate and stay secure at the same time without having to actually do all that research yourself to become experts in those compliance requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. We take the burden of launching our AI tools, the AWS AI tools, partnering with the large language models and foundational models, bringing them into the space, and we take the responsibility of authorizing those services so you can take advantage of those services and build on top of them and really just focus on the accreditation of your aspect of the service and abstract the underpinnings to us. Absolutely.
So I want to check in, Amanda, to see if we had any questions or give folks a chance if they have any any burning questions on any of this, anything that we've covered, or maybe stuff we haven't that you might want to know more about.
So
Yeah,
I'll give
absolutely.
folks a second here to ask any of those burning questions. To your point, Melissa, I know sometimes people are a little bit question shy, so I'll pose one back to this group here, and that's just, if after hearing this conversation and kind of hearing some of the points that both Melissa and Jennifer have made, if you're kind of rethinking your strategy, your tools, kind of how you're ensuring that security and compliance, and you are interested in learning more about, this trusted industry partner, I'll put up one more poll on the screen. Feel free to fill that out if you are interested in exploring more. I'll leave that up for you. We can have someone on our team chat with you if you want to do your questions in a more one-to-one nature and maybe not as much on a public webinar. So I'll leave that up as we close things out. But I know there was at one point, maybe I'll kick us off with the questions if folks haven't thought of theirs yet.
Mhm.
We had, when we were talking about this webinar, we almost titled it "The Future of Cloud Security in the Public Sector," right?
Yep.
And we thought about what that might look like, and we kind of scaled it back to, hey, here's the current state. But is there any kind of look ahead that either of you are doing when we think about the future of cloud security in the public sector? I know you just touched on some of that AI portion, but
Mhm.
are there any kind of real forward thinking pieces of information that this group can take away and kind of start to channel their efforts towards?
Yeah, I'll start. I think I don't know how forward thinking is, but I would say top of mind, particularly in the federal space, is zero trust. And so we get a lot of conversations around zero trust, how to enable that, what how can somebody get in front of those requirements? And there's a lot of zero trust requirements, and there's pillars, and there's all sorts of things. But fundamentally at the core, and we talked a little bit about this or a lot about this, is having fine grained control over who has access to your information, automating that, being able to audit that, and creating, user policies within the environment that really make sure that people only have access to the thing that they really need to have access to, which is really at the very kind of foundation is what zero trust is about, right? Not allowing access to everything to everybody, but really locking that down. And so that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. It's something that the federal government particularly spends a lot of time thinking about. So I think we will continue to hear more about that, and it will really challenge folks to think differently about who and how and why they give access to customer data. I don't know, Melissa, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, that similarly, that kind of leads into one of the things that we're thinking about, and that is how can you take the data you have and do some predictive information? How can you support your staff to be able to automate in the same way we want to automate that access and that how do we automate the response, or how do we provide educated information or get guesses, not guesses, but educated answers to support your staff in providing the best services they can to your client base? Part of that is how do we take that data, ensure that it's being accessed and tracked in a secure manner, analyze that information and provide only the answers back and not have to give full access to that root data to your staff as well. So how do you kind of not just take that access control, but apply it out to the solutions and that predictive stuff that we're looking for leading into the AI? How do we really empower workflows? And so that's something that we're thinking a lot about, is making sure not only kind of that we're able to provide those predictive, those workflows, functionality. We have we call workflows or rules and alerts or things like that you can set up and say, if this happens, I want, or how do I set that automatically up so that it provides an email or a prompt or a note in the system to users to help them provide better services? How do we do that while maintaining that secure method and model? As people talk about AI, one of the biggest concerns is how do I make sure no other organization or no one else can access my data? I want to leverage these large language models. I want to leverage this AI, but I don't want, someone typing in a client counseling session into chat dpt to give a suggestion back on how I can respond. But we want to give counselors prompts of different things based off of the information to better support and see better outcomes. So how do we do that securely? And so that's something that's really been on our forefront and our mind and thought as we're building solutions into the application, is as we're taking advantage of AWS's AI-based services, how do we make sure that we can do that in a secure manner? How do we make sure that your data is your data? We're not sharing it with anyone else, but we're still be able to provide those recommendations. So that's kind of a big thing. That's been a big thing looking forward for us, is really taking advantage of those AI while still keeping those design and secure practices in mind, and always compliance.
Yes.
Because we all know FedRAMP, they got to know exactly who has access to your data and when at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I that is also something we spend a lot of time thinking about. If you look at service like Bedrock, as an example, one of the tenets of Bedrock, right, is that we're not training the models with with your proprietary data. And so we think very hard and long about that as well, is how do we make these models, or how do we make these services work and and be effective and do the things that we need to do, but also have the proper guardrails to make sure that we're not bleeding your data out into into places where you don't want it to be. So yes, we are tightly aligned on that one.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for those. Really appreciate that kind of foresight and forethought, whether or not it's super, super forward thinking or just short enough. That's awesome to kind of get folks' wheels turning. We had one more question come in around developing user policies and around access. And some folks wondering if you have any recommendations for where to start or resources to consult for those user policies and access.
Yeah, so well, I guess I'll start. So within AWS, we do have guidance around how to establish IAM policies, best practices. Those are available. If you Google, you can see those. They're very general policies, but really it would be, working with somebody like Bonterra within their environment, establishing what is comfortable for you. So Melissa, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, so I was actually going to reference AWS documentation because we've used that, and we even use that as we're thinking about how we implement our access policies within our application. We really look and think through those fine-tuned controls. And as Jennifer said, I'll be honest, the documentation by AWS there's a ton. Let me tell you, there is so much, but there's a lot of really good information in there around just thinking about those best practices. The biggest thing I would think about is the least access. Just because it's easy and you may want to let's just give everybody access to everything all at the same time, doesn't mean that that's the best solution. So you really want to think through, at maybe it's a individual record level, a type of program or service, thinking about maybe geographically how you want to control access. It's thinking through and looking at, okay, here's all the systems, here's all the types of data or the things that I have. What are the different roles? You'll hear a lot about things called personas. Oh, the receptionist, or the financial administrator, or the manager, those personas, those types of roles. You want to think about who those types of roles are that you have in your organization. What type of information do they need to do their job? And what type of information do they not need to do their job? And you're going to create some practices and some policies around that, the types of access and list out and kind of figure out what they need access to. And then you map that into whatever technical solution, whether it's software, or our case, the actual software accessing the records, or maybe it's even your server hardware that we have with AWS, and those IAM policies and controls is really looking at, here's the things we need to access with these people. So let's create a group of these people, not Susie, John, Mike. We're not going to set up a separate policy for all of those people. We're going to set up a group of people. We're going to set up a policy, and we're going to associate that policy with that group so that you can be consistent, that really using that role-based mentality. And this is something I've loved AWS's documentation and the way they've designed IAM, is it really takes that approach. And we use a similar approach within our softwares as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Great answers to that one. And I think we'll maybe have time for one more question here that came through. And this was one that, it's funny, we actually kind of talked about this in the beginning, knowing that this would come into play for folks in our audience who are wondering, how should state and local agencies be thinking about FedRAMP compliance? Does it matter to them? Maybe what are some of the nuances? Do you mind just touching on that a little bit?
Go ahead, Melissa, you can start.
Yeah. So we get this one a lot. We have, I'll be honest, we have customers around the world. So it's not just federal and state within the US, but we have the same kinds of concerns in Canada and other countries and geographic. And it might be a province or a state or a city, or there's so many layers of security and policies and things. One of the biggest things we found as our compliance and our experts in security and data and all of those kinds of things within our organization is really looking at, in general, what we have found, the federal tends to set the precedent and the practice that the states follow. So a state not only might have their requirements, but they have to make sure they're following the federal requirements in order to get the federal funding. So the kind of premise or the main idea is make sure you're compliant with the federal first. The states ripple down underneath of that. In the similar, if we're meeting the most stringent compliant requirements, if you're doing that, you're going to meet the requirements of other things that are less stringent as well. And so with this, we at Bonterra have pursued a FedRAMP moderate. Even though we're only going with moderate, as Jennifer said, we might only need moderate. We still ensure that we're only using US citizens that are accessing, and not just US citizens on US soil. So they actually have to be physically present in the US while they're doing the work and working with these systems. So we're keeping in mind, we're trying to be as stringent and go with those higher level of requirements, even though we may not need that for a current compliance requirement. And so similarly, federal, if you're meeting those stronger federal requirements, you're generally meeting those state ones as well. And our customers in the review and in talking with the states, if we've got FedRAMP compliance, the states are allowed to use it as well with the not just compliance certification.
Right. Yeah. From an AWS perspective, we've taken the stance that FedRAMP High, meeting the NIST controls, are all demonstration of our ability to meet state ramp requirements. And we have seen folks built out on GovCloud using our FedRAMP package as sort of the underpinnings for their state ramp if they choose to go through state ramp or something like that, their state ramp work. So that's how we think about it as well. Similarly aligned, we are maintaining a high bar, and we're perfectly comfortable. We have many partners who have achieved state ramp, but meeting FedRAMP is always good. So
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I'm going to give folks a couple of seconds here to get any final questions that might be looming into the Q&A, because I know sometimes they get missed. So I'll give folks just a minute. We'll sit in silence for a second and stare at each other, which everyone's really good at.
I will say, I know I'm breaking the silence already, but I will say if there are questions that you do have that following up from this webinar that you're not sure on, Amanda and the team at Bonterra, who are kind of heading this up, they have mechanisms, which I know Amanda will be following up from this webinar, ways you can get in touch with us. They're able to send those questions across to myself and to Jennifer at AWS as well, so we can get answers for those for you. So if you don't know your question now, or you're not sure how to ask it yet, you can still ask it later, and our team is happy to answer those. And Amanda has my direct line. She can get a hold of you at any time. And we got similar with AWS, so we can get those answers pretty quickly for you if you have those.
Yeah,
so
appreciate
don't
that
be afraid. We can follow up with you at any time.
Yeah, well, thank you both so much. It doesn't seem like any have come in just yet. So wanted to take a minute to just express our gratitude here, kind of for the audience, from myself personally, for both of your knowledge and expertise and taking the time to share that with us here today. This was a really informative session to kind of get the gears turning, have folks think about things that they might not have yet, or reiterate things that they may have thought about but needed that refresher on. So Really appreciate both of you. Appreciate our partnership with AWS, Jennifer, and for kind of being someone who's spearheading that with us here today. So really grateful for the both of you for being here. And I hope everybody enjoyed today's session. Keep an eye on your email for the recording and some follow-up materials. And we hope to see you at our future webinars. Always a pleasure to have you here, and hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Happy Hump Day, folks.